Aloha and howdy, everybody, and welcome to the second annual Web TV Trailblazers Summit. I am Rhonda Abrams, host and producer of the summit, and today we are so lucky to have Ramón Govea, who is a writer, producer, and a transmedia pioneer of Mast Studios, and today he's going to discuss how he's been able to go from series concept to sale using multi-platform storytelling and some cutting-edge online marketing techniques. So, hello, Ramón. Tell us, what is transmedia and what do you do as a transmedia consultant?
How you doing, Rhonda? Thanks for having me. So basically, transmedia started with a professor at MIT named Henry Jenkins. He kind of coined the term and introduced it. But transmedia is something that has evolved into a pretty commonplace thing, especially here in Hollywood. And essentially what it is it's marketing or telling a story using multiple platforms. So what was once considered like, I don't know, it can even be compared to IP franchising, but in a way it's about keeping the brand or the IP under one ownership and developing products or content, really, that's distributed over different platforms. So, for example, Guillermo del Toro is a producer that does this. Tim Kring, who did Heroes, is a good example of that's a transmedia campaign that he did with Heroes, where they shoot web content to supplement the TV show. You know, a lot of people now are doing Twitter campaigns where they have characters that have their own Twitter accounts that are tweeting with fans and tweeting with each other. A good example of a really successful transmedia campaign was something called the Lizzie Bennett Diaries, and they actually won a whole bunch of pretty prestigious awards for what they did. But they shot a lot of YouTube video blogs in character. The characters also had Twitter accounts, and they were also corresponding on different social media platforms. So it's really just integrating one story across multiple platforms. That is what someone who runs transmedia campaigns does.
Okay, I see. So it keeps the audience interactive, basically.
Exactly. I mean, and it's interesting because it comes at a time when the internet is always changing, it's always evolving, but right now in particular, when it comes to marketing stuff online, it used to be about numbers, how many fans you have or how many followers you have, but more and more what we're seeing is engagement is the actual currency. It's what I call social currency, because you could have 100,000, 200,000 fans, but if only 10 or 100 of them are actually participating on your page, then it's not really much value to you. And with a lot of advertisers now shifting towards online and spending money to advertise on these online platforms, engagement is really what's going to get the producer or the creator of the IP, whoever runs the business, that revenue that we really want when creating content online.
Okay, so can you tell us what, like for example, what you would do if, let's say, I was your client and I have this web TV series about immortals.
Okay.
So what would you do first as a consultant? What would you need from me?
Well, basically, when I sit down with someone who has an idea that they want to take across platform or really blow up their brand, I like to call it explode your brand. I take a lot of the principles that I've learned working with some of the leading online marketers. So a lot of these people have built businesses with email marketing, social media marketing, basically generating leads, as you call them, through like very free means. So basically not spending a lot of money on advertising or anything like that, just doing kind of the grassroots. So if we were doing something like this, which is, you said you wanted it to be a web series, if that is your ultimate goal, then the question becomes, how do you get people engaged in that web series? So the first thing is I want to get clarity on what your goal is, right? What's your ultimate goal? Is the end game just the web series, or is this something that you would want to be a feature film or a TV show?
TV show.
Right. So TV show is usually the common answer.
Let's get specific on cable.
Okay, great. No, the more specific you get, the better, because specificity is really what is going to help you to sort of construct it from the with the end goal in mind. So sure. So you wanted to target a cable network. It's great that you have that clarity. So what you would want to do is you want to understand who is watching that cable network. You know, who's that target demographic? Who is spending their hours watching all that programming? And number one, who's the network that's going to want this concept or this idea? You know, is it the Sci-Fi Channel, or is it FX or TNT? You know, they all want different things. So once you understand who your market is, who you're trying to sell to, that's when you're really determining your niche, and that's when you figure out what platforms those people are on, what platforms they're using, and then how you can integrate that web series into those specific platforms to target those people who are going to like it, who are going to want it, and who will eventually pay to see it. Or if it's a TV show, who will tune in for the ratings, which will give the incentive for the network to actually keep the show running or want to pick up the show. Because what's interesting is that there are a lot of studios and networks that are now scouring the internet for high quality content. You know, there is just a tremendous opportunity right now for creatives to actually get it on a major either channel or with major studio for distribution. So it's there. You know, it's really just about building your following and building a buzz around your brand, around your IP, and then leveraging that so that when you go into a meeting, you can say, well, this is how much interest I've already generated. These are the viewers that I would be bringing with me to your show if you were to greenlight, you know, a season or whatever it is. So yeah, it's definitely where I would start, is with clarity.
Okay, sounds excellent. As a producer, what has been your experience when you were producing and selling web series?
Cool. So I've been producing since 2010, so about 4 years now. In that time, I've done a lot of commercials, different campaigns, and a few web series. And I've had the really great opportunity to work with some super talented directors and producers. It's been really amazing. So in that time, I actually founded Black Mast Studios. And I ended up partnering with a company. We created a web series, shot it in a weekend on the iPhone, and we ended up getting it sold to Warner Brothers, which was fantastic. You know, it was a huge accomplishment.
You shot it with an iPhone on the weekend? That is awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and the director was pretty incredibly talented. So a lot of it was him. You know, he did the shooting. We didn't have a DP. The director was the DP. We got some lenses, macro lens, and some long lenses for the actual iPhone, and then just went out one weekend and shot it. A lot of it was improv. We worked with Katrina Law, who was on Spartacus. Very talented, super nice, and yeah, so we went the route of the director had a manager, and we were able to get it in the room, and they really liked it, and actually wanted to get a development deal with this company that I was working with. At the time, I was the VP of Business Relations for that company, so I learned a lot about development and how to really package stuff for a studio or for a network. So it was a tremendous learning experience for me, and we ended up selling it, and we haven't seen it yet. So this was like 2 years ago. It's somewhere on a shelf in Warner Brothers. Who knows if it'll ever get distributed?
They bought it and they haven't aired it yet?
No, they have not. No. So I'm crossing my fingers that at some point it will resurface, and everyone will get a chance to see it. But it was really experimental in a lot of ways, because it was there was no script, just a bunch of actors, and you know, it was kind of an all hands on deck thing. So we all went out, we all shot, we all participated, and yeah, it was fun to have Warner Brothers validate us like that and pick it up. Was a lot of fun. It was a great validation. So when I left that company, I ended up you know, focusing more on my shingle, Black Mast Studios, and taking what I learned about packaging and marketing, what makes something marketable for a studio or for a digital division of a studio. Because that's ideally who you're targeting when you're creating a web series. You want to make sure that your idea is something that's going to be marketable for an online distributor. So there's like, now, obviously, there's a lot more Hulu. There's a ton now, and they more and more keep coming up, where they have partnerships with advertisers. So the advertisers bring money, and they'll actually show commercials before your web series. As long as the content is good, and as long as you have an idea of who your niche is, then you'll be able to find a home for your web series. So there are also the multi-channel networks on YouTube, like Machinima, Maker Studios. You know, there's a ton, and everyone has mixed feelings about them because, you know, it's a very kind of Wild West sort of situation there. There's no real rules with legal contracts and negotiations and deals, and everyone's just kind of making it up as we go along.
Yeah, that's why I call this Trailblazers, because it is pretty Wild West.
It really is, yeah. So appropriately titled. So my next project, I had an idea for a superhero web series, and I wrote the pilot. It's like 10 minutes. It was going to be 10 8-minute episodes, and I ended up pitching it to a comic book company. And they loved it. It turned out that it fit in perfectly with something that they were already building. They're building a new world. So we ended up signing a deal. They bought it, and now it's going to be a comic book series. So all I had to do was shoot a 4-minute trailer, just kind of give them the idea of the concept and the quality of what the web series would look like. And it's actually evolved since then. So for the last year, we've been in development, really building out the characters in the world. We brought on a seasoned comic book writer. He's working on the book. I'm still the creator, so it's a really good position for me to be able to work with a comic book company, which is where my passion lies anyway. So yeah, those are the 2 web series that we've been able to get sold.
Does the comic series have a name yet? Or
yes, it's Incidentals. So it'll be coming from Lionforge Comics. We just finished the first issue. Will be out pretty soon. I saw the pages. Coloring is brilliant, and it's really great to see characters that I came up with come to life on the page. Like it's really cool. So we're actually now going to use that. We're leveraging that comic book property now to strengthen the IP so that we can pitch it to a larger network. So we're actually going to start pitching it as a TV show instead of just thinking small terms as like a web series.
Oh, okay. This is exciting. Do you have a net that's just too far in the future?
No, there's definitely a few places that it could reside, and it's really going to depend on who really enjoys the script and who really kind of feels the story. But because of the relevance of Comic-Con, you know, New York Comic-Con was just this past weekend, and San Diego Comic-Con has become massive. It's a really big way networks are realizing to connect with their fans. I mean, if you look at like Walking Dead, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you know, all these shows that are coming out, you know, Arrow, a lot of them are based on comic books. And so studios and networks are now starting to realize that when you have a following, that you can easily translate that over to ratings. And so it's much less of a risk for them to take on an IP like a book or a comic book or any kind of property that already has some kind of pre-existing basis. You know what I mean?
So this is also where transmedia comes in really well for a web series or a book or anything, is if you get that audience going, and then you could go someplace like Comic-Con with all these people coming in looking for your booth or your presentation. Is that correct?
That's right. And so when I work with clients, what I try and drive home is the point that you should be thinking, I mean, you don't have to, but if you really want to create something that is going to have longevity and sustain you as an artist, then you want to be thinking in terms of the IP. Now, there's no guarantee that you're ever going to get to keep ownership of your IP, especially when you start doing studios and networks. Because a lot of times they just want to buy it outright. But at the very least, if you create a strong enough intellectual property, something that spans a few different platforms, whether it be a book, a comic book, a graphic novel, whatever it is, then you come into that meeting with just a little bit more power. So you're able to use all of that to negotiate a little bit more than the average writer or the average producer who doesn't have any credits would be able to. A lot of times you're gonna be faced with, okay, well, we like the script, we just like to buy it, we're gonna end up, and they won't tell you this, but they're gonna end up hiring someone else to come in and take over, and because you don't have a lot of credits, you'll kind of be left out,
Oh.
So basically, by looking at it as creating an IP, you can sort of set it up so that maybe you're licensing it out as a series, or maybe they do want to buy the whole IP, but they'll pay a little bit more money for it. So that's kind of the point, the main thing that I try and instill when I'm working with clients, as far as building a series or a brand or an IP.
For those who might not know the lingo, what's an IP?
It's an intellectual property, so it's basically just an idea that you own. Oh, did I lose you? Are you there?
Okay, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Did you get knocked out too, or was it just me?
No, I think it was just you.
Okay. Good. Okay, let me put you back up there on the screen. Okay, cool. All right. I'm sorry. Where were you when I got knocked out?
I know. So I was just explaining what an intellectual property is, which is basically just the idea.
Okay.
So, it would be like the title of your web series, right? That would be your intellectual property. And as long as you registered it and registered the script and all that kind of stuff, then you would have ownership of that idea.
And tell our audience where you would register it. Just in case.
Well, if it's a script, you definitely want to register with the Writers Guild. So you would go to, I think it's wga.org or something like that. And you just pay $20 and you register your script. So at that point, when you send out your script or you share your script with anyone, it's already registered, so no one can take it and run with it and do what they want with it.
Okay, perfect. Now, Ramon, I was reading, which is another, I was very impressed, that's why I invited you. I was reading, one of the reasons why I invited you, that you had a really big crowdfunding success with a film that you were helping?
Yeah, part of what I do for some clients is I will consult on crowdfunding. I've helped to run quite a few, and some of them have failed, and some of them have been really successful. And so recently, I've been able to compile all of that knowledge into sort of a formula that they're like killer crowdfund tactics, is what I call it. And basically, it summarizes everything that you should prepare before you launch a Kickstarter campaign. So just a few weeks ago, we ended a campaign and helped them raise over $21,000 for a short film. And a lot of that legwork was done before the campaign even launched. So it's really important that you do your research before you launch a campaign. A lot of people think that it's just like a matter of chance. You throw it up there, you message your friends, and you hope that you're going to be able to get funded or that it'll go viral. But there's actually a series of formulaic steps that you want to take to make sure that you can, number one, optimize your exposure, because the more numbers and the more eyeballs you have on it, it's all a numbers game. You're gonna, as long as you're targeting the people who are interested in the subject matter, then you're looking at maybe anywhere from 4 to 6% of those people will actually donate money. So that's the key, and yeah, I've figured out a great formula that seems to be working consistently now. So I do help clients with that.
So how much time period before launch do you, on an average, do you think someone would need before they started
I think that's directly proportional to the amount of money that you're raising. So if you're raising, say, for example, between 5 and 10 grand, you want to give yourself at least 3 to 4 weeks. But I always suggest that you want to give yourself at least a month or more. The more you want to raise, the more time you want to give yourself, because you really need to get that exposure for whatever it is that you're crowdfunding for. So a lot of it is building relationships ahead of time, targeting people who you're going to want to write articles or blog about your Kickstarter, and really just building general interest. But there's a lot of stuff that I provide for clients, like email templates and step-by-step instructionals, literally from like day one to before you launch, just to make it easier, because it can be overwhelming and it can be a really daunting task. And I don't really recommend anyone try to do it completely by themselves. I would definitely recommend getting an assistant or 2 or possibly 3. That would be a good number of people to have helping you, because it's a lot of data collection, and it's a lot of filling out lists, and it's a lot of contacting people. So it's almost like a whole marketing campaign within itself. I mean, it essentially is.
So you would need a minimum of how many people for a team, do you think? 3, 5?
I mean, it can be done with 2 or 3, but I would say no less than that. No less than that.
And is that counting you as part of the team too, or?
Yeah, but it's definitely a full-time job. I mean, you want to be dedicating at least 20 to 30 hours a week to do all the things that need to get done leading up to it. And then during the campaign, it's really helpful to have one person who that's all they do. And so I have been that person before. There's a bunch of different ways to do it. I either help people with the plan before, and then they bring on an assistant or an intern to actually handle the day-to-day during the campaign. But I mean, when I help people, a lot of what I promote is really just being ready and having everything that you need ahead of time, so that when things come up, like if a blogger wants to write an article about you, you know exactly what to say. I've already kind of outlined a template for you to send them. Or if you all of a sudden have access to a famous actor who might be interested in this, then I have templates for that as well. And so it just becomes almost like a cut and paste process where you just customize with your project and a couple details about it, and that's it. So yeah, I'd say at least 3 to 4 people. Definitely all hands on deck kind of thing. But if you can afford to, like, if you're raising $20 to $30 or $40,000, then it's definitely worth it to pay someone $1 to $4 grand just to help manage this whole thing. Because in the end, what you can do is you can write that off in what you raise through crowdfunding. So that's how you would justify being able to do that. So I mean, it's an investment, really.
Yeah, and a good one, because I had a little bit of experience with it, and it is definitely more than a full-time job, I would say. Yeah, so I would really suggest people either contact you or someone like you to get the help, because it's pretty overwhelming.
Yeah, and I've got some free tips and stuff for people too in a document that I'll talk about at the end of this. I'll send you guys a link or something.
Okay. So you also deal with branded content. What is your definition of branded content?
I mean, it really falls in line with transmedia. The core of a solid transmedia campaign to me is really great storytelling. So, and this stands true for marketing in general, because if you want to get someone to watch something of yours or to buy a product or service of yours, it's really going to come down to them, number one, believing in what you have to offer, and then number 2, being having enough of a need, or thinking that they have a need for what you're delivering to them. So with branded content, I mean, it's essentially just content that fits within the scope of what you're presenting in such a way that it's like pieces of a puzzle is the best way to look at it. So when I talk about transmedia, the analogy that I tend to use is it's like a house. So your IP or your idea or your product, your service is wrapped in your brand, right? So whether that's like say it's a sci-fi project, right? And it's a dystopian sci-fi project, something that I'm working on right now. So that is going to be what your brand, the basis of your brand, right? So all of your followers, all of your fans, anyone who's going to want to engage in that is going to want to know how to get in that house. So so you have your name, you have your vocabulary, as I like to call it, which is how you present what your brand is. So you're not going to say certain things on your social media. You really want to hook people by telling a story that's going to lead them to the house. So all of these different platforms are vehicles for that content, right? And what makes it branded is that they're all basically like different windows for the same house. So if someone stumbles upon you on Twitter, right, then there's going to be a certain kind of way you're going to talk to them on Twitter, certain kinds of posts or certain hashtags or certain information, certain kind of content. And it's going to be a little bit different if you were communicating communicating with them on Instagram, because Instagram is strictly photo-based for the most part, or video-based. And that's different from Facebook, and that's different from YouTube. So branded content is really just about figuring out what the optimum content is for that platform, and then making sure that that is layered in your story. So whatever the ultimate endgame house is that you want people to get into, you want to make sure that the window fits with the house, that there's some continuity there, so they can basically follow that path. And then after that, they'll be able to explore the other windows and realize that it's just a much more vast that brand or IP. You know?
I say that even web series should consider themselves branded web series. What do you think about that? I mean, if you're going to do one, it just seems like you should go ahead and put in the effort to brand it. I was just wondering what your opinion was on that.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, if you're going to invest your time in something, I think depending on what your ultimate goal is, because, I mean, sure, you can say that your ultimate goal is to get it on television or to get on a network. But I think ultimately that's not necessarily the real goal, because there's always something that you think you will get by being on TV or by having a feature film out. And a lot of times what you'll discover, and this is the process that I work through with clients, is what you think you want isn't necessarily the result that you really want. So getting to understand what that result is, whether it's you want to be recognized as a famous writer, or you want to get your content to as many people as possible. A lot of those things can be accomplished without being on TV, especially with the way that the internet is changing everything. So once you get clear on that, and you can figure out, okay, well, once I know what I want to do, I now know what elements I can add to this to strengthen that goal, or to make sure that I achieve that goal faster. And that is where transmedia or branded content comes in. That's where you can start expanding into different platforms, or at least figuring out what specific platforms will help your specific web series to get those fans or get those views, or raise the money to shoot a longer pilot. That a lot of times there's, like I said, there's a different result sometimes than you might think.
Okay, all right. And in the whole transmedia consulting that you do, and in this industry, how important is social media as a marketing tool? How
It's critical. It's so critical. It's probably one of the most important things, because social media has changed how we reach an audience. Before, a lot of times, if you had money, you could spend a whole bunch on newspaper advertisements or billboards or TV commercials. And those things are expensive, so you really need a lot of money and juice behind them in order to get there. At that point, it's kind of like a one-way announcement, right? So people either see it and then they accept the call to action, whether it's go buy this sandwich or watch this TV show, or they don't, and it's just a numbers game. The more people see it, they might be more likely to watch it or participate. But now with social media, you actually have that direct-to-market engagement, so you're able to really have a two-way conversation with people that need or want your product, or that you want to need or want your product. So it's more than just getting on a speakerphone and saying, I have this web series, watch it. And there are ways now to use social media to draw people into the story and to get them hooked and to actually engage them in a two-way conversation where they're going to want to come back tomorrow, or they're going to tell their friends later what they experienced. And there's a couple different companies that are doing this really well. And then there are, Blizzard is one that comes to mind. I have a buddy who did a transmedia campaign over at Blizzard Entertainment, who, for those that don't know, they did World of Warcraft and Diablo and just some of the top-selling games of all time. And so he did a whole Twitter campaign where some of the characters from a video game were talking to each other about events and other characters. And so the real fans went to the website and had to figure out this code to even get access to the website. They entered the password and they were shown all these Twitter accounts, and so it was a very immersive thing. And without that social media platform, you don't really have that engagement. You don't have that immersion into the story where you can participate and feel like you're a part of it, especially with YouTube videos and things like that.
On, let's say, social media, what is like the average length to get someone's attention but not bore them of any type of material, whether that's written or video? You know what I mean? It's like you don't want to write a book about something, but is it a sentence or two if it's text, and is it so many seconds for a video?
It's interesting because this is something that is constantly evolving, and each platform has its own analytics, right? So part of what I do as a transmedia consultant and with my experience in social media is we are constantly looking at analytics. You have to analyze what works and what doesn't. So some recent numbers that came out for like Facebook, and this was interesting, it surprised me, is that posts that have more than 80 words and a picture seem to trend really well. People will share them and things like that. I found that to be interesting. With Twitter, hashtags are very effective. Instagram, hashtags are even more effective. A lot more people are, because of the nature of the platform and the way it's designed, a lot more people are clicking on hashtags on Instagram than on Facebook or even on Twitter. So it really is something that you want to be watching and you want to be constantly studying so that you know how to alter your posts to maximize engagement. There's also different times of day, there's frequency, and again, these are the different formulas that I've used to build brands, to a point where there's enough momentum where we have 50,000 people engaged and 100,000 people on the page.
Ramon, can you give us some examples of like what an interactive call to action might be? Just out of
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would depend on what your goal is, but asking questions are always good. Polls sometimes work, depending on your fan base. Let's see here. Let's say, for example, we're talking about your web series. Maybe one of your characters has a Twitter account, and they're asking questions about real-life events or stating opinions about real-life events to get more engagement. It's really just about directing people to do the next step. And you're sort of ushering them in the direction that you want through a call to action. So I'll keep it simple. If you're trying to get people to visit your website, for example, you just need something enticing that's going to get them to click on your website. So you'll want, first of all, you have to know your audience, and you have to know who you're talking to and how to talk to them. So based on that, you'll say something that you know will get their attention. If it's a bunch of people who love Star Trek, you'll want to talk about Star Trek. You'll mention Star Trek. You might hashtag Star Trek, and you might ask a question like, who's your favorite Star Trek captain, right? You'll probably get some answers from that. Right. At that point, you might lead them into something on your website if your website is about, a new starship captain that you're writing about or something, It's got to be relevant, and it's got to be something that's going to hook people. I mean, it's really just about grabbing people's attention in a very small span. And the way to do that, and it's interesting because the internet has changed how we interact with each other and how we influence each other. So it's a bunch of small tribes, essentially. So if you can figure out what kind of interests sort of bring your tribe together, then you're able to communicate to all of them really effectively. So again, knowing your niche is number one. Knowing who's going to be interested in what you're selling or what you're making or what you're creating, whatever your art is, and then being able to talk to them. I mean, I have a lot of friends who are comic book artists, and the way that they generate interest for their comics is sometimes by doing drawings of very well-known characters. So they'll draw a picture of Batman and the Joker or Superman, and that will get people to go to their page, and they'll say, oh, what's this other cool stuff that you have here? And that's where they'll find their creator-owned stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, and then you mentioned Batman and Superman. That's always, it seems like every set I go on, I don't know why, the big thing that gets everybody all engaged is if Batman and Superman had a fight, who would win? It's like, oh my God, it just comes up all the time. But
Yeah.
Come with something like that, you probably get a lot of engagement.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. It's really just about asking questions that get people passionate or get people fired up enough to participate.
So, another thing I'm curious about is what is an example? Because it seems like it goes without saying if it's a web series, or a comic book, because there's a story in there. But can you give us an example of finding a story in a brand? Like a product.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, let's see. The big companies do it all the time, I would say. They start a lot of times with a slogan, and then they'll build a culture around that. And so a lot of it, I think, comes down to what's the culture that you're building around your product or service. I'll give you the example of I saw recently that some fast food companies are really targeting millennials, and so they're using a lot of actors that kind of look like hipsters. They've got beards and glasses, and that's an image. That's a subconscious culture that they're trying to appeal to. Certain phone companies will try and appeal to minority demographics. It's really about understanding what culture you want to create around your service or product, and then communicating in such a way that you can connect with the people that are in that subculture. And that, I think, is ultimately what it comes down to, and that's your niche. That becomes your niche, whether it's for a set period of time because sales are down in that demographic, or if it's because you're passionate about, for example, I have a friend who makes bird feeders. He raises exotic birds, and so he created this bird feeder. It's like some breakthrough device. It's like an automatic timer. So I was telling him, like, you just want to target people who obviously love birds and who either raise them or have ever owned one, or who are really passionate about bird watching. Those are the kinds of people that you want to learn how to communicate with, and that is what you're going to build your brand around. Is that culture, that whatever hook you can find that moves you. A lot of time, if you run it by your community, you'll find out what hooks them as well. You know.
Okay, this is really good stuff. Because like I said, with a web series or something that already has a story in it, and then you bring up branded content or branded marketing with the whole storytelling thing. Some people get a little caught up because it's like, well, how do I make a brand out of this product that how to make a story out of it? So that's
Right.
helpful.
And it helps to, generally speaking, start with your own story. The internet, again, it's shifting our culture so much that because we're able to connect with our peers online and have these conversations just through the internet, what draws someone to you on Facebook a lot of times is what's going to draw someone to you if you're selling a product. So people want to know what's interesting about other people. So if you can somehow utilize your passion, and I always recommend people start with their passion, because this process of building a brand and all this stuff, it's definitely not easy, and it can be discouraging. But if you're doing it with something that you're passionate about, you're 10 times less likely to quit or stop or whatever. So I always say start with something you're passionate about, and then figure out what your story is. What got you to the point where you wanted to tell this story. And then highlight that in the story. If we're talking about a service or a product, but if we're talking about a TV show idea or a film, there's obviously an inherent story within that script or within that book. So you want to focus on that, and those are the key points, the themes, the motifs, all of those elements that are going to make it, give it that broad, marketable appeal. That's what you want to focus on with all of your branded content. I can say I'm working on a sci-fi project right now where I'm working on a short story on anthology, I'm working on the comic book, and I'm working on the feature-length script. So I'm doing all of that simultaneously, not obviously at the same time. There's a method. But
are you doing it all yourself, or do you have other people? That's a lot of work.
Yeah, no, I've gotten a couple best-selling authors to come on board and actually write some of the anthology stories. But everything else, the comic book script and the feature-length script, is all me, which is, a lot of work. But because I'm passionate about the story and because I'm passionate about the message that the story is going to deliver, when I start creating these other platforms to hook people into the comic book and into the film, I'll be able to sort of take those stories and give them a little bit more life by stretching them out into different areas. So the story is about the future, and it's a dystopian society. So there will be a major theme in the feature film that is going to differ a little bit from the comic book, because the comic book story is going to lead right into the feature film. So it's not that I'm taking the story and adapting it and rehashing it in a different medium. Mm-hmm. It's that we're taking different pieces of a larger world and we're spreading that out onto different platforms. So you could, for example, go on Twitter and see this character, not yet, but eventually, you'll be able to interact with this character and you'll get to understand the world through that character's eyes. But then if you read the comic book, you might see that character in the comic book not as a main character, but you'll understand that character's perception of the world, and you'll be much more engaged in what happens in the comic because you sort of understand where they're coming from.
Wow, that is very layered and very interesting. Wow.
It's very layered. It's all layers, and that's why transmedia it's something that needs to be, in my opinion, implemented very early on in your development process. It's not something that you can just kind of tag on to something you're already doing. You want to think through what is the end game, what is that house, and what are the different windows that we can put in to get people to that house.
Well, I know as a writer, when you write a character, you have this whole backstory for this character, where they come from, what do they like, what are they afraid of, and it stays on your computer someplace. But
right.
you know where it is, and you can take that now, it sounds like, and share it, and it just makes the character, even more alive for the audience. That's incredible.
Exactly, exactly. And now with the way advertisers are shifting to social media, you can monetize that content now. So that's why I say build the whole IP, come up with as much content as you can, because when you figure out what your delivery method is going to be for all that content, like you said, all that stuff that usually ends up sitting on your computer. If you figure out, so if you figure out where to put all that stuff and how you're going to lay it out and how you're going, in what order you're going to present it to everyone, you can actually turn that into a monetizable brand. So if you have enough followers across all of your platforms, say you have, eventually you can get to like 500,000 people between Twitter, between Facebook, between YouTube, and you're sharing all that content in sort of a circular, viral way, then you can approach advertisers and say, hey, look, I have 500,000 eyeballs on this. I'm averaging this many hits on my YouTube. I'm averaging this many followers or shares on my Twitter and Facebook. Then you can deal with an advertiser and actually get money every time someone views your social media.
Wow, that is definitely cool, the monetizing part. Anyone have any questions out there? If you're on G+, you can just post it right up on the wall. If you're on YouTube, I think that maybe Ramon or I can get over there and answer.
I'll check it out.
Over there, and Ramon will be happy to answer. Ramon, I think you have a gift for our viewers too. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Pretty much everything we talked about here, I go into in a little bit more depth in a free report that I made up. So I kind of just compiled all the key ideas and all the fundamentals of this like cross-platform campaign when you're branding something. And so there's a lot of pieces to it, and I know it can be really overwhelming for a lot of people. So I actually compiled it into a few pages that kind of outlines beat by beat what social media marketing consists of, some crowdfunding tips, what you need to consider or do before you start. There's a little bit in there about what makes something a solid transmedia campaign. There's something else I can't remember right now, but yeah. So there's a whole bunch of information in there, and you can just go to, I think it's transmedianow.com. I actually have never released any of this information before, but I get so many questions all the time that I figure it's something that people can really use. And if people do want to go into more detail with it, then you can always contact me. If you register for the free report, you'll get it in your email today, and then you can just contact me directly if you want to schedule a consultation or anything. I'm giving away 11 more. I still have 11 more spots for free consultations before the end of the month. So if anyone wants to take up that offer,
that is very generous. And if you're on G+, it is the button that says official website. Right on the event, you click that, and then it'll take you straight to Ramon's gift. And if you're on the Web TV Trailblazers website, you'll see a big old blue button that says Transmedia Gift. Click that, and you'll go straight to it. So thank you, because that's very generous, Ramon.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just want to help people who, I mean, it's really meant for people who want to do it yourself. It's something that I think will really benefit anyone who's building a brand or who's creating a web series or any kind of creative project that they want to sort of expose online. I mean, this will really at least give you the fundamentals of what you should think about doing if you want to eventually make money on it, because that's a key. I mean, we all want to do what we love and engage in our creativity for a living, but it's not always easy, and we don't always have the tools to understand how to make money on it. So I'm trying to basically empower a few more people to understand what it takes to start at least making money doing that.
Well, that's really wonderful. Like I said, very generous. So in your mind, where do you see the industry going with, well, web TV and transmedia? I
mean, I think that's the future. I think we're already living it. It's still the beginning. You know, there's still a lot to be worked out, but numbers don't lie. And when you start looking at the numbers, you know, you see online networks like Netflix that are just killing it right now. For a long time, they didn't release any of their numbers, and now we know that they're dropping some big money for exclusive rights to certain shows and certain content. And ultimately, I think what it's going to be about is if you're producing really good content, people will pay for it. You know, there will be networks or there will be studios. Everyone's starting to shift online. There are a whole bunch of new digital brands that are coming out. You know, there's obviously Warner Brothers Digital. That, you know, Paramount has a digital division. All these different studios understand that there is a future in digital. And if they don't get into it now, they could potentially miss the boat with understanding how it works and being able to later capitalize on a system. But that system hasn't really been built yet. So there's a lot of gambling going on right now. A lot of people are making wagers on content that isn't doing so well. And then there are, you know, people like Netflix, companies like Netflix that are doing their own content that's absolutely stellar. Orange is the New Black, you know, House of Cards. They've got a deal with Marvel now for Daredevil and some other shows that are.
Yeah, I saw that. I just saw that the other day. Wow.
Yeah, and I think Amazon is now willing to pay a lot of money for original comedies. Yeah. So what that has really done, what the digital landscape has done, is it's really leveled the playing field for creatives who want a shot at writing and producing high-quality content that would normally be reserved only for TV. So you're going to start seeing a lot more online networks like AMC and HBO start to pop up and emerge, I think, over the course of the next 10 years. And content, like they say in marketing, content is king. And I think that's going to stand true for the entertainment industry. They also say marketing is queen. So I think that this is really going to be the key to doing well in the entertainment industry over the next 10 years.
Yes, excellent. Do you have any last tips you want to give for the audience? And also remind us of what that link is again. The free gift link on G+, you just, on the event, click official website where it says official website, click that, they'll take you to it. On Web TV Trailblazers, it's the big blue button that says Transmedia gifts. So any last tips?
No, I mean, I hope that was all helpful. And again, you know,
I know that was really a lot. I mean, thanks.
I know. I could talk for probably days about this stuff.
Well, I can tell you know it well, and that's why I'm just so glad you came on, because
it's difficult to track. It's something that I've been watching for the last 10 years. You know, I've been keeping a very close eye on the evolution of entertainment on the web, and you know, I think now is the time for everyone to kind of have that opportunity. So I'm actually starting to put this information into you know, things like free reports, and I'm working on a book now too about it. So yeah, I want to kind of get everything that I've learned in the last 10 years and start putting that into some kind of digestible format for people, because it can be overwhelming, and there's no way that unless you've been tracking it as long as I have, that you can wrap your head around everything that's been going on. So I want to help people stay ahead of the curve and get on this now before the studios you know, really dig their heels in and start to kind of compete big time for that content. So.
Yes, exactly. So your gift site is, let's give everyone some sites here for you.
Sure, it's just transmedianow.com.
Okay, and your website?
My website, you can go, I have two, you can either go to my personal one, which actually if you go to transmedianow.com and you get the free report directly to my personal website, which is RamonGovea.com, and there's a whole blurb about transmedia in there and the consultation that I do for that. But then I also have the production company, which is blackmaststudios.com. So BLACKMAST studios.com. And again, just go to transmedianow.com, and that will direct you to everywhere.
Now on blackmask.com, you have some really neat projects up there, and we still have a few.
Oh, thanks.
Want to tell us about some of them?
Yeah,
I mean,
I've done, I've put some commercials up there. I've worked on a couple documentaries, and some of the trailers are on there. I've done demo reels for actors before, so I have a good solid grasp on production. I've been doing it for quite some time now. Definitely digital production. So all the film and 35 millimeter stuff is before my time. I do hope at some point I can get to do that. But yeah, so there's tons of stuff that I've done on there. And again, if you have any questions about what I'm doing now, my websites kind of go into that. I'm working right now. I'm writing for comics and for films. So that's my my passion projects. That's what I'm working on.
Well, thank you, Ramon, for sharing your time, because you sound like you're a very, very, very busy person. Take the time out.
Yeah, all my friends agree.
Yeah. Take out the time to come on here and speak with us. So thank you very much. And
thanks for having me.
Okay, and thanks everyone who showed up. I've been watching the view count go up and then a little down and up. So thanks everyone who came to watch live. And tell all your friends, because the replay will be up for a limited time. Anyway, thank you, Ramon. Bye,
thanks,
everybody.